Hey everybody, welcome to the Debrief. I'm ABC's Devin Dwyer. Happy Friday to you. A number of major stories developing right now. In Chicago, actor Jussie Smollett out on bond, declaring his innocence after being charged with filing a false police report there. We're live in the Windy City with the latest. There are breaking developments. Stay with us for that. Plus, major showdown shaping up this weekend in Venezuela, where Nicolas Maduro is set to face off with U.S.-backed opposition forces. We will go there and find out what's in store. And if you are flying lately, you might be getting used to those tiny economy class seats, while our David Curley introduces you to one airline that's making those economy seats bigger. All that right after these headlines.
Three, two, 1, 0. Ignition.
SpaceX causing eyes to turn skyward in Florida with its latest launch. The Falcon 9 blasting off, carrying Israel's privately funded lunar lander. Israel is seeking to become only the 4th country to successfully land on the moon. If all goes well, it'll reach the moon in about 2 months. On this same launch, SpaceX launching into space a satellite to improve internet connectivity in Indonesia.
Sounds like there you go on your...
And in dramatic fashion, the Falcon 9 rocket managed to land upright back on Earth to be reused.
The NBA has opened negotiations with its players' union after lowering its age limit from 19 years old to 18. That would mean many high school seniors could go straight into the NBA instead of spending 1 year in college. The NBA's commissioner says the current 19-year-old age limit doesn't work for the league or for colleges. The hope is to have the lowered age limit in place in 3 years.
Social media is having a field day after Nintendo appointed Doug Bowser as its head of American operations. Ironically, Nintendo's iconic villain in the Super Mario franchise is named Bowser, as you may recall. Bowser was one of the top worldwide trends on Twitter last night. With his new role, Bowser is one step closer in his decades-long battle to defeat Mario.
Well, we start today in Venezuela, where a major showdown is shaping up this weekend between President Nicolas Maduro and U.S.-backed opposition forces determined to get tons of U.S. and international humanitarian aid crossed over the border into the country. Our Tom Llamas is live in Caracas reporting on the latest developments. Tom, great to see you, man. Tell us what you expect to play out tomorrow, and is there any concern that the Venezuelan military could intervene in this?
There's a major concern right now, Devin, and we've already started to see clashes overnight. Essentially, those trucks that are traveling from Caracas, from different parts of the country, southwest to the border with Colombia, to Cucuta, that's where the hundreds of tons of aid, a lot of that American aid, and people in Venezuela want that aid to come into the country. Now, the problem was this clashes. The National Guard blocked some of these trucks, and so there were clashes, and there's been a report at least one person has been shot and killed so far, so things are coming to a head. Tomorrow is going to be the big day, though, and there are so many things happening. First, you have Richard Branson, who's hosting a concert right on the bridge, sort of the focal point of all of this right now. He's hosting a concert with a lot of famous musical acts. The Maduro government is trying to host another concert that'll start today. At the same time, all these aid trucks trying to transport this aid, and Maduro has made it very clear that he's not going to let any of that American aid into his country. He says his country is not a country of beggars. He's telling people on state-run TV that those medical supplies, those food supplies are all rotten, and they're a trick, essentially a trap. If the Venezuelans take that, then the Americans will take their country. He's telling Venezuelans that President Trump wants to turn this country into a modern-day Vietnam. He wants to turn this into Iraq. He's actually, yesterday on state-run TV, he cited Andrew McCabe's book, saying that there was a passage in that book alleging President Trump suggested going to war with Venezuela over its oil, and he read from that passage, Devin, yesterday on state-run TV as proof that President Trump doesn't want to help the Venezuelans. He wants to take their oil.
Wow, that's incredible. Maduro quoting the former acting FBI director that President Trump fired. Tom, I didn't see that. That's incredible. Meanwhile, speaking of President Trump, the vice president, Mike Pence, really leveling pressure against the Maduro regime. We expect Pence to be in Colombia over the weekend as well. How much of an impact is the administration's pressure having? What have you seen there on the ground?
Anytime President Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, Senator Rubio makes a statement, it's almost simultaneous that you'll see Nicolas Maduro take to state-run TV and rebut anything they say. Earlier this week, we saw President Trump in Miami talking to Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans. He called Maduro a dictator. He said he was a Cuban puppet, that he wasn't a Venezuelan patriot. Right after that, Nicolas Maduro went to state-run TV. He was with all of his generals saying they were ready for any type of military formation that may happen in Colombia. He was warning Colombia to stay out of this, not to get involved. But afterwards, he did shut down the border with Brazil to make sure none of that American aid comes through Brazil, because Brazil also wants to help the United States and the other countries. There's about more than 50 nations right now that are recognizing Juan Guaido, the interim president right now, as the true leader of Venezuela. So he shut the border down with Brazil. He's considering shutting the border down with Colombia. There are rumors he may even shut down the airspace so there's no domestic flights, because he wants to make sure any Venezuelans, because Guaido has called on 1 million Venezuelans to help, to volunteer, to get to Cucuta. It's very hard. It's about a 12-hour drive, or a 3 or 4 hour flight. So it's very hard to get to Cucuta unless you're already over there. But those truckloads, those caravans have already left from Caracas a couple of days ago, and now they're clashing with some of the Venezuelan military.
All right, Tom Llamas, live for us in Caracas. Tom, thanks so much for coming on. Have a good weekend reporting down there. Major developments ahead. We will stay tuned in to you. Now to Chicago. And the story everybody is talking about, Empire actor Jussie Smollett out on bond and declaring his innocence today. This as producers now of his show have announced they are removing him from the final episodes of this season. Our Stephanie Wash is in Chicago. She's been leading our reporting for the network all week long on this huge story. Stephanie, great to see you. This is a major turnabout from producers of the show. What are you learning?
Certainly, Devin. I mean, this is breaking news just coming in minutes ago that the executive producers of the Fox show Empire say that the events of the past few weeks have been incredibly emotional for all of us. Jussie has been an important member of our Empire family for the past 5 years, and we care about him deeply. While these allegations are very disturbing, we are placing our trust in the legal system as the process plays out. We are also aware of the effects of this process on the cast and crew members who work on our show, and to avoid further disruption on set, we have decided to remove the role of Jamal from the final 2 episodes of the season. Now, yesterday, we reached out to Fox for a statement, and they said that they were evaluating the situation and considering their options. This is obviously a huge development. We do know that after Jussie appeared in bond court yesterday, he headed straight to the set to film at Empire. He said he had to go to work. That's what his lawyer told the judge. So this is obviously a huge development that the executive producers of Empire are now speaking out, saying that he will not be appearing in these final episodes.
Yeah, and as Smollett and his attorneys are insisting now in public statements, Stephanie, that he is innocent, and at least should be considered innocent until proven guilty. You know, yesterday you brought to us here in the debrief all of the allegations the police laid out in great detail, the evidence they've amassed to prove, they say, that this was a false hate crime claim. Does his team dispute any of that? Why is he sticking by his story in spite of all that evidence?
Well, Devin, Jussie Smollett has never wavered. He has continued to maintain his innocence. His lawyer speaking out in a statement recently saying that they're going to mount this aggressive defense and defend their client. A statement from his legal team last night, in fact, stated that the presumption of innocence, a bedrock in the search for justice, was trampled upon at the expense of Mr. Smollett, saying that he's a young man of impeccable character and integrity, and that he feels betrayed by a system that apparently wants to skip due process and proceed directly to sentencing. Yesterday, when Smollett appeared at that bond hearing, the judge addressed him and said, "We presume innocence in this country. That's what we do." But he said that if this was actually true, if these accusations were true, that it was despicable that he used a noose and that it was utterly outrageous. Jussie Smollett shook his head in agreement when the judge said that. His legal team has said that throughout this investigation, there's been previously leaked information, both true and false. So Smollett's legal team standing by him tonight, and Smollett continues to maintain his innocence.
Wow, we will see where this goes from here. A lot of support for Smollett has been vanishing in the past 24 hours. Stephanie Wash, thank you so much. Terrific reporting. Keep it up out there in Chicago. Moving on now, just about 2 months after declaring a quick and total withdrawal of all U.S. forces from Syria, President Trump has changed course. In fact, the White House said yesterday that around 200 American soldiers will remain in Syria for an extended period of time. Our James Longman has been in Syria for the past 12 days, reporting some pretty incredible reporting, in fact. And James joins us now. James, how significant is this news from the White House that Americans will be staying there?
Hi, Devin. Yeah, I think we have to see this announcement more as a political move than a military one. It came after a conversation Donald Trump had with President Erdogan of Turkey, and I think it's political for two reasons. You know, 200 troops, what can that really achieve militarily? They are here to keep the peace and assure the Turks that the Kurds who are here really who've been empowered in their fight against the so-called Islamic State somehow their power is going to be limited by this U.S. troop. These U.S. troops, here in Syria, and then also it's in a way it's to assure the Kurds that the Turks are not somehow just about to attack, because there's a lot of sense that, you know, for U.S. troops to leave, that Kurds are going to somehow be abandoned, and that if U.S. troops did go back to the United States, that the Turks would come in here. We know that there are military assets just not very far from where I am now on the border between Turkey and Syria, and the Kurds are very worried that the Turks are going to move in. Sarah Sanders called this a peacekeeping force, and I think that's what it'll be. It'll be a peacekeeping force between the Turks and the Kurds, and also possibly to kind of get the Brits and the French on board by them kind of coming up with some troops to kind of bolster that force here in northern Syria.
Wow, an incredible turn for the president nonetheless. James, we've been sort of wowed by your reporting this week over there. I know you've been to Syria many times before, in fact, studied in Syria at one point. Bring us behind the scenes. We've seen some of your pictures on social, but what an adventure it has been for you, harrowing at times this past week.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to see it as kind of a life-threatening camping trip in some ways. That's kind of how I describe it. You know, we had to kind of stock up on supplies in Iraq. You drive over the border between Iraq and Syria. It takes kind of 5-6 hours. You have to go over a river. You need all kinds of permits to get here. And then basically our time has been crisscrossing kind of northeastern Syria to go to all the kind of flashpoints. One particular route that we have to take was down to the Al Omar oil field where the Kurdish and American bases are located, and that's right on the edge of the front line with the fight for ISIS. And there, really, the conditions are disgusting. You know, you are sleeping in kind of the damp, wet conditions, but you're kind of with other news organizations. There's a collegiate sense. CNN helped us. They let us use their satellite at one point, so we're all kind of mucking in together. But yeah, certainly sleep deprived over the last 12 days or so.
And quickly, before we let you go, we saw the picture of the flat tire you had there. Tell us about that moment. Understand that was particularly scary.
Yeah, well, you go on convoy out of that camp to try to get closer to the towns that are being liberated. And on our way there, a tire flatted. We all had to stop, we get out. That actually had only stopped being the front line a few weeks previously. Areas near there have only just been demined, so we weren't wandering too far away. And only a few moments later, when we were back in the convoy, where we stopped again because SDF convoy escorts who were with us spotted ISIS fighters on their bikes on the horizon, and we know that these guys strap belts to themselves and they drive towards anything they can see. You know, that's how they kind of mount attacks. So we all stopped and waited to see if these bikes were coming towards us. SDF vehicles drove off in the distance. I mean, they were quite far away, but we were assured that they were ISIS bikes. So that kind of gives you a sense that, you know, we talk about this as being the defeat of the caliphate, and that might have happened, but there's a lot of these guys out and about, and we have to be very careful the way we move around because we're obviously a target as well.
Well, James Longman live for us in Syria. James, thanks so much for your reporting. Stay safe out there. Appreciate you very much. From Syria now to Rome, where an extraordinary Vatican summit is underway, now in day 2. Today, the focus is on accountability in the bishops who allegedly moved around abusive priests to shield them from penalty. Our David Wright is there in Vatican City. He's been covering the summit. David, so what sorts of proposals are on the table today to sort of do something about this, and what are you hearing from victims groups as this summit continues?
Well, Devin, as you say, the focus today is on accountability, specifically accountability for bishops. The church has done a pretty good job since 2001, 2002, when the Boston Globe spotlight scandal first broke, of policing priests who are accused of sexually molesting children. There are procedures that are in place now, certainly in the American church, to deal with those priests. What they haven't been so good at is dealing with bishops who, historically, going back decades, have moved priests from diocese to diocese, basically enabling the abuse, shuffling it under the carpet, turning a blind eye, call it what you will. There is a growing call for the church to deal with that, and that is one of the issues before the bishops and cardinals today. One proposal put forward by the Chicago Cardinal, Blaise Cupich, today, that's got a lot of support among the Americans, would basically take each bishop and put them under the regional cardinal or the papal nuncio, the Pope's ambassador to a given country. Right now, every bishop basically reports to the Pope. But this would put in place a procedure whereby if somebody had a complaint against a specific bishop, they would be able to make their case to a cardinal or to the papal nuncio and have that case tried and have the outcome decided by the Pope with the help of some sort of accountability mechanism. Right now, the regional cardinals have seniority, but they don't have supervisory capacity. This would change that.
Well, change does not come quickly or easily in the Catholic Church, but this is a very significant meeting that hopefully we'll see some positive change come out of. David Wright, thanks so much for that. Now turning to a never-before-seen video of an Uber driver who was confessed to killing multiple people in Michigan. He says the app told him to do it. Here's a little bit of what he had to say. Take a listen.
I'm not a killer, and this is what I know that I have killed. That you guys are gonna have a hard time believing this, but it literally took over mind and body.
The Uber app?
Yes. It was red when I first started. Okay. I switched from red to black. Okay. When it's in that black mode, it literally has control of you.
A bizarre case. Our Matt Gutman has done a deep dive on it for 2020 tonight. Matt, this is really something. He said the app took over his mind and body.
He basically said that he had been a puppet, that the devil, as he said, in the Uber app took control over him. And he first started noticing it, Devin, when he looked at the app and he saw what he said was the devil horns in the U of the Uber app and then an Eastern Star. And then apparently there's more. I mean, it was a pretty convoluted insanity plea which he had started to create for himself. This is, of course, Jason Dalton, who shot dead 6 people, wounded 2 others nearly critically in Kalamazoo, Michigan in February 2016. He basically said the Uber app had controlled him during this entire rampage. But what is so frightening about this particular episode and this specific man, Devin, is that in between the shootings, he would go back on the app and actually pick up passengers and deliver them to where he was supposed to take them. So there were riders in the car, and in some cases, some of them actually asked him because they'd heard about the shooting spree, and they went to the driver next to them and say, "Hey, you're not that guy who's going around shooting people, are you?" And in one of the cases, one of the riders told us, no, that Jason Dalton said, "No, it's not me. I'm just feeling a little tired today." So it's this incredible story of something going horrifically awry and terrorizing this college town of Kalamazoo, Michigan, for 8 consecutive hours. And because it was an Uber driver and because he switched guns and cars about halfway through, police had no idea who this man was. And it took them hours to unravel this mystery. In the meantime, this town is completely apoplectic with fear, frozen with it. And so not only do we detail what Jason Dalton did, what he told prosecutors drove him to do it, but we obviously talked to the victims as well and what they remember. Now, it's important to say, Devin, Uber says safety is its first priority. It now has something called the Critical Safety Hotline, response line, in which you can actually basically send in an SOS to Uber. But in 2016, when the shooting happened, that did not exist.
Wow, it certainly hits close to home. So many of us use Uber, and that is a scary story. Much more on that tonight. 2020, Matt Gutman, thanks so much for that. We look forward to watching tonight in primetime. ABC, 2-hour event, The Deadly Ride with our Matt Gutman. Thanks for that, Matt. Moving on now, some good news for air travelers, at least if you're flying Delta. The airline has announced they are making wider seats, even bathroom windows available on some planes. Our David Curley got a chance to check it out. Here's what he found.
Greetings from Atlanta, Devin. You're looking at a Delta 777, and if you've flown internationally on a wide body, you know that can be really, really comfortable. Well, Delta is introducing a new regional jet, and this is it. It's called the A220. Now, this is actually an aircraft that's made in Canada by Bombardier and has been now a deal with Airbus. This is the first time it's flying in the United States, and we're going to give you a little tour. What Delta says they're trying to do with this aircraft is give you the feel of that wide-body aircraft, the 777 or any other big aircraft, on this small regional jet. So as you come aboard, we're going to show you how they've done that. And the reason it feels a little bit more like a wide-body than, say, any other regional jet you fly in is what they've done with the seats. You can see that it's 3 and 2. That means there are many fewer middle seats that you don't have to worry about. And while airlines have been shrinking some of their seats, Delta actually decided in this aircraft to give you a wider seat. So this is 18.5 inches wide, and they actually give you a pitch of 31 inches. So your knees, my knees sometimes in some of the other aircraft, are pushing against the seat. So you've got a little more room. The biggest screens, they say, in their fleet in the main cabin. So you've got your entertainment center here, you've got power and everything else. So the idea, according to them, bigger windows, bigger seats, all an effort to give you a sense that you're in a wide-body aircraft. They like to say if you flew a wide-body internationally to the United States and then got on one of these, the A220, that you probably wouldn't feel the difference, that it would feel kind of the same as you're flying on this aircraft. And there's one little thing that's really fun about this aircraft. The lavatory here in the back, in the main cabin, has something, as I called it, it's a room with a view. There actually is a window here that you can see out, and it's a lavatory that's got some decent size. That is the new A220 that Delta's just introduced into service. This mostly is going to fly on business routes, Boston, LaGuardia to Houston and elsewhere. Comfortable plane, and this is a regional jet. Not bad. I know you like to fly, Devin, so someday you'll have to give the A220 a try. Devin?
All right, our thanks to David Curley for that one. Look forward to trying out the bigger seats on Delta. Next now to a groundbreaking investigation from our friends at ESPN. They're revisiting one of the biggest scandals in sports history. Now, despite claims to the contrary, it appears NBA ref Tim Donaghy did conspire to fix games he was officiating, games he and others were also betting on. If you're unfamiliar with the story, here's a quick look back.
In 2007, the NBA was rocked to its core when the news hit that referee Tim Donaghy had admitted that he had illegally bet on games he himself had officiated. For his crimes, Donaghy would spend 15 months in federal prison. Basketball is especially vulnerable to fixing in a way that other sports aren't. For referees, it's simple. To benefit one team, all they have to do is call fouls on the other team. And because fouls are so common in the game and so subjective and discretionary, fixing can be hard to detect. But in an interview with ESPN after he was released from prison, the disgraced referee insisted he had never fixed any games.
I was not actually in these games fixing the games and you know, throwing calls to win a bet.
You expect us to believe that you did nothing to manipulate the outcome of an NBA game?
Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I can just go back and tell you again that the FBI and even the NBA concluded without a doubt that I did not fix NBA games.
And I'm joined now by the reporter who broke the story at ESPN, Scott Eden. Scott, great to have you. You spent hours, years actually, poring over hours and hours and hours of game footage, watching Tim Donaghy's calls. And you found that contrary to what he said just there, that he was actually manipulating the games. Tell us your big takeaway here.
Yeah, so we did two things. We ran two different data analyses to make our case, and then we also had a series of human sources, so people who, over the years, say that Donaghy confessed or admitted to them that he indeed manipulated the games in order to win bets.
And you were shocked by how easy this actually is to do. Tell us more about how he actually pulled this off.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that, again, through human sources and then through, kind of sussing out the patterns in the data, and by data I mean the call logs, what fouls he was calling through the course of the 2006 and 7 season. That's what we focused on. You could see that essentially he called more fouls against the team that he was betting against. So you can manipulate the score in as easy a way as that without calling erroneous calls, without calling fouls that threw up red flags. So it kind of went undetected in that way.
Well, what's been the response to this? Have you heard anything from the league? Any chance that authorities might pursue another criminal case against him, do you think?
No, statute of limitations is over there. The NBA we got in touch with prior to publication for their comment. Haven't heard anything since.
Wow. Oh, nothing from Donaghy either.
I believe he's continuing to deny that he manipulated the games.
Wow. So if this is so easy to be done, and this case stretched over years, and the piece on ESPN.com is absolutely incredible, and you lay out in quite methodical fashion how you came to this statistical analysis. But in your view, what needs to be done to prevent this from happening? And are you confident that it's not happening right now with other refs?
I mean, human nature being what it is, always looking to exploit an edge, I don't think you can ever be confident. And I think we need to let go of the notion that major American professional sports are immune to this. And it's we're on the verge of legalized sports betting. So the amount of money flowing through the it is a global betting market is only going to increase exponentially. And I think the incentives then to put it in a fix are only going to rise. Now, of course, the counter argument is that with legalization in the United States will come transparency, sunlight being the best disinfectant, and that is to a degree true. But I think there needs to be almost a regulatory body, almost like a Securities and Exchange Commission for sports betting, because the betting markets even now are almost as big as financial markets and as sophisticated.
Well, major business, and this is a big shocker. Scott Eden with ESPN, groundbreaking investigation into that big scandal over 12 years ago or so with Tim Donaghy, an NBA ref who rigged the games based on what Scott found. Scott, thanks so much for joining us. I hope everybody takes a look at your piece. Finally today, moving on to Oscar weekend, we're counting down to Sunday's big show out in Los Angeles. Our Romina Puga is there. She's been checking out the costumes the stars are wearing this year. Take a look.
I read that you guys had a Wakandan Bible to outline each of the tribes. Who wrote that? How did you guys rely on that for the costumes?
Well, when you're creating a world, everybody has to be on the same page. And Ryan Coogler and Hannah Beekler, the production designer, who's also nominated, they created a manual, and it was like our Wakandan Bible. And it talked about each tribe in Wakanda, more tribes than we actually displayed in the movie. We actually cut it in half. But each tribe had a list of which actual tribes in Africa that we would be inspired by.
So you worked with 3D printing,
yes,
right? Had you ever done that before?
No, I had just really heard about that technology with regards to adornment and costume work and fashion.
Yeah.
This piece here on Ramonda, it's her shoulder mantle, her collar piece, as well as her ishikolo, her hat, were both 3D printed. And what we tried to do was take all of the styling of the ishikolo hat. Usually it's a woven hat and it's done by hand. So we really wanted to keep the integrity of the hat.
What was the inspiration behind this and that mix of this vibranium and future technology?
I say, how do we turn this suit into this story of Africa? We added a small little triangular pattern that's all over the suit. The triangle is kind of the sacred geometry of Africa, and we thought that the triangle would be a really beautiful symbol for this suit in particular.
Can you tell us what you'll be wearing at the Oscars?
I will be wearing a few things, something African-inspired, but not African, and something queenly, but not the queen, and something very me as well.
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, sort of like Wakanda.
And you can check out all the fashion live here on ABC News Live on Sunday night. We'll be on the red carpet, full coverage. Countdown to the Oscars starts at noon Eastern time. And of course, you can watch the entire show on ABC. The live pre-show starts at 6:30 Eastern time. Be a lot of fun on Sunday. And of course, hope you join us later today for the Briefing Room, our politics show on here at ABC News Live, 3:30 Eastern time. World News Prime comes up at 8 o'clock tonight. And of course, download the ABC News app for the latest on all the stories we've talked about today. Thanks so much for watching The Debrief. Hope you have a good weekend. I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. We'll see you next time.